cloud, and hope you may get an alert that says got it, and you just got to click on it, and hopefully everybody will be able to do that. And then what I'll do is I'll introduce the speakers. This is TENZI. Let me see. We got Kevin, Carroll, and Steve Mark, two former advertising execs, and they will share their story of how they came up with a simple game idea, found a manufacturing partner, and after lots of trial and error, sold over 3 million units. Their journey is about innovation, risk-taking, luck, and more. Kevin Carroll grew up in a large Irish Catholic family. After graduating college, started working in advertising. 17 years into his first career, Kevin left and went out on his own, where he taught engineers, scientists, and techies how to give great presentations. We could certainly use that help. Eventually, Kevin phased out of the consulting business and teamed up with an old friend from his advertising days and launched a successful board game company. Steve Mark began his career as a copywriter, writing catchy jingles and irreverent ads for clients like Corn Nuts and Slim Jim. This reminds me of Dick Van Dyke, who used to sit around and write jingles all day. I love those jingles. But the real fun started when he ran into ex-colleague Kevin Carroll, who launched both his and Steve's second career with the simple statement, let's come up with a dice game, which is great. It sounds like he did that over a few beers. So without any further ado, take it away. And if you're not speaking, please mute your mic. Also, if you have any questions, just type them into the chat, and I'll see if I can ask the questions as the presentation goes. Thank you.
Terrific. Hey, thanks, Doug. And what we'll do, Doug, is we'll tell our story, basically. There's not going to be any PowerPoint or anything. We'll tell our story, and we'll go back and forth between Steve and I, and at any point jump in with some of those questions that you're getting on the chat, or if you have questions, and we'll have a conversation as we tell our story. So I'll start a couple years prior to when TENZI came out. So TENZI came out, was in 2010. So I'm going to take you back to 2008. I've always loved games. I'd loved more thinking about them and creating them rather than playing them. So I've always enjoyed games. And back in 2008, I had an idea for a word game. And I created a prototype. And a friend of mine in Norwalk, I live in Westport, Steve's in Greenwich, and a friend of mine who lives in Norwalk said, oh, you got to meet a friend of mine. Her name is Mary Elroy. And Mary Elroy is also a game inventor, and she's a game agent. And I said, well, what the heck is a game agent? And she said, well, she takes people like you that have ideas for games, and she's got connections in the business, and if she likes the idea and thinks it has merit for some company, she'll shop it around and try to get a licensing deal. So she said, I think you should meet with Mary Elroy. So I had not known Mary and called her and said, hey, here's who I am. And Mary and I agreed to get together. And I had this word letter game for a little bit, and we tried to shop it around. There wasn't a great deal of interest with it. And Mary said, hey, let's collaborate on other ideas. So between Mary, myself, and my daughter, Claire, we came up with a different idea, and that idea was called Pickles to Penguins, which is, what do we call it, Mary? The quick thinking, picture linking party game. So we came up with Pickles to Penguins, and that was the concept. And I remember exactly where I was. I was driving my car in Stamford in October of 2008, when Mary Elroy called me and said, hey, guess what? You're in the game business. And Mary successfully was able to connect our idea of Pickles to Penguins with a company that was interested in licensing it. And that was an exciting day, because after all these years of liking games, I found, wow, I'm in the game business now. So that event happened, and I thought that was pretty much going to be the end of it. And then 2 months later, it's early December 2008, and I'm with my family at the Audubon Center, I guess it is, in Westport, and we're cutting down the Christmas tree. And who do I bump into but an old advertising buddy of mine, Steve Mark. Hadn't seen Steve in 10 years. And we strike up a conversation, and he said, oh, what are you up to? And I said, well, I still do a lot of coaching on presentations. That's my main thing. I love doing it. But, I came up with a game idea recently, and a friend of mine, Mary Elroy, was able to license it to a company, and I guess I'm in the game business now. So Steve said, well, I've got ideas. We should get together some point. So we agreed to get together, and 6 months later was the day we finally did get together, and we started to kick around ideas. And some we liked, some we didn't like, some had problems, some, but we went round and round for probably at least 9 months. And then I was doing a little research, and I discovered that there was some company along the way, a game company, was interested in a dice game, and they were willing to have submissions for dice games. So that helped me a lot, put a kind of a box around coming up with a game. And with creativity, as many of you know, the more constraints, sometimes that's what you need, because if it's too open-ended, it's hard to come up with solutions sometimes. But by focusing on a dice game, I thought that's a pretty cool thing. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve in a moment, because what I did was I went online, got on Amazon, and bought a whole bunch of dice. And after 9 months of trial and error with other ideas, I handed Steve a bunch of dice. I took a bunch of dice, and I said, hey, Steve, let's see if we can come up with a dice game. You go your way for a couple of weeks, I'll go my way. Let's get together in a couple of weeks and we'll see what we come up with. So that was the beginning of the possibility of a dice game. And I'll hand it over to Steve now, as I handed over those dice, and he can continue with the story. Steve, are you muted?
I was just saying what Coca-Cola's secret ingredient was. So he hands me over a bag of dice, and they're regular dice, polyhedral dice, all these different kinds of things. And one of the few skills I have is coming up with bad ideas. I'm really good at coming up with a lot of different bad ideas. And so I was just trying all these different kind of combinations with these different dice. And one of the dice games, I was playing with my young daughter at the time, and it had 4 dice to it. And I just kept adding dice, and there's 5 dice, and 6 dice, and 7 dice. And eventually I just got, because 10 is a nice simple number, I got to 10 dice. I was like, I wonder how fast I can roll all these 10 dice on one number. And I did it, and I was like, oh, that was the old cliche light bulb moment. And I was sitting there, and there was a letter right there, and I quickly scribbled down, I don't know if you can see that, it says speed Yahtzee, 10-1, right? And just right there, speed, let's see how fast we can just get all 10 dice on one number. And it was so simple, but it was kind of fun because there was a little bit of adrenaline rush every time you did it. And so I Googled, and I said, all right, this had to have been done before. So I kind of Googled around all the different things, and nothing was coming up. So called up Kevin, excited in a couple of days. I said, Kev, I think I got it. I think I got something here. And I explained the rules. You take 10 dice here, you roll as fast as you can, get all dice on one number. And in Kevin's infinite wisdom, after I pitched him the idea, he said, that's it. And I said,
I think I also added, who are you to waste my time like that with a silly idea like that? Roll 10 dice.
Exact. So, but after we worked together a little bit, came up with a bunch of different varieties and some of the different rules. And it was kind of starting to take form, take shape. Then the next thing, what we needed to do is figure out if we were going to license it, or if we wanted to try to, hey, give this a go ourselves. Because it had so few moving parts, both literally and figuratively, we said, hey, let's see what we can do, if we can maybe make some prototypes and see what happens here. So that's where kind of every time an idea that goes from idea to reality, I think there's a little bit of luck, a little bit of kismet or serendipity. So we have a lot of dice, right? So we buy all these bulk dice from the internet, right? Easy. Went to the Container Store. We got to get a kind of package somehow. So we went to the Container Store. I had 10 dice in my pocket in the Container Store. I'm walking around and I see this container. I was like, oh, wow, look at that. It's like there. And so I take out my 10 dice out of my pocket and I say, oh, look at that. It fits perfectly, 10 dice right there. And then we had some rules, and we kind of rolled up the rules in a little scroll. And look at that, the rules fit right in the middle there perfectly. And then there's another dice and another dice and another dice. So it's a perfect little container. And then we sort of make a little sticker right here of our label, TENZI, that we had. And we stuck it on our thing. And boom, right like that, we had a prototype. Now we're buying all this retail, so our prototypes are costing us, $15 to make a game, but we had 6 prototypes there. After a few weeks, we had 6 prototypes, and that's where we then thought our game was ready to show to the world a little bit.
Right. So we now have these prototypes, and actually, Steve, that day that you were standing in my living room saying, "Hey, I think this could work." Steve, now again, the name of the game is called TENZI, because you're rolling 10 dice, and it's currently spelled TENZI. When Steve first had it, it was he showed me the sign. He goes, "And we're going to call it," yeah, there it is, TENSI. And honest to God, I looked at it and I said, "Tennis?" He goes, "No, TENZI." I go, "Oh, okay, TENZI." And for some reason, the S just didn't snap for me. So I said, "Well, what if we go with a Z instead of an I?" Now, how do you rationalize that? But for some reason, one, I don't think anybody's going to mistake TENZI, the pronunciation. And 2, Z just feels like a fast letter. For whatever reason, Z is a fast, fun letter more so than S. So Steve said, "Yeah, that sounds like a good tweak to it." So we ended up calling TENZI, and we had our prototypes. So Steve came up, it was October 30th. I remember this day because as good as that day was when Mary Elroy called me and said, "Hey, we sold your Pickles to Penguin idea, our Pickles to Penguin idea." It was October 30th, 2010. And Steve and I said, "All right, let's just go to some specialty toy stores, some gift stores, toy stores, knock on doors and see if some local merchant would be willing to carry our prototypes." So we walked on the first store and we went to Fairfield, and basically it's Fairfield and Westport, first couple stores. And the first guy said, "No, not interested." Somebody else said, "Well, come back when the manager's here." And, so Steve and I go to our third store. Now it's funny, Doug, that we're talking to a group mostly from Fairfield because the Fairfield Hobby Town, right off exit 22, off 95, we walked in at 10 o'clock in the morning to truly the most ideal person in the universe that particular morning, because we walked in and we said, "Hi, we're local game inventors, and we have some prototypes of a game we came up with, and we're wondering if maybe you would kind of maybe think about carrying these." And she turned to us and she said, "Hey guys, if you can tell me how to play your game in less than 30 seconds, I might be interested." Now I'm going to repeat that because that's the name of our little presentation today is how to build a game business in 30 seconds or less. Because that line, when she said, "If you can tell me how to build, play your game in less than 30 seconds or less, I might be interested." That has been that was so important for TENZI and so important for the success of that game and subsequent games. Because when you think about it, I once read years ago that forget about your customer, think about your customer's customer. So in other words, this retailer, her name is Celeste Vanderlip, by the way, wonderful woman. Celeste's customer is a mom, let's say, and she's in the store, she has no time, and now the retailer is going to try to pitch her a game idea. So Celeste clearly knows that she has only seconds to try to communicate to mom what a new idea is. So when we told Celeste, "Well, here's it. You take 10 dice, you roll them as fast as possible. You're competing with somebody. You roll them as fast as possible, and whoever can collect 10 of the same number, like 10 sixes before somebody else gets 10 sixes, whoever can do that first yells 10Z, and they win." And she said, "I love it." Which I was a little surprised about. I thought she might say, "Oh, that sounds interesting." She goes, "I love it," because she was so clear that she needed a game she could explain quickly. In fact, I tell people that TENZI makes rock, paper, scissors look like a Mensa test. It is that simple an idea. So she said, "Sure, give me your prototypes." And Steve and I are hanging out in the store, and we're looking for, we had prototypes in that form that Steve just showed you, and we were thinking, well, maybe there's a different form, and Steve will talk about that in a little bit. So we were at the store hanging out, looking for other packaging ideas. And within 5 minutes, I think Celeste yelled over, "Hey guys, I got your first sales." And honest to goodness, with the first customer who walked in, Celeste pitched her on it, and she sold her our first games. So we were rockets at that point. Now the price, Steve said it was probably costing us $15 or so, if not more, for each prototype. We said to Celeste, we don't know what the price of the retail is going to be. Let's just start at $9.99. So doing the math on that, the prototypes are $15, and we're selling them retail for $9.99, which means we're selling them to the store at half of that for $5. So clearly, when you're in the prototype stage, you're not there to make the money. you're trying to figure out pricing and costs. So Celeste went on for another couple of weeks and she sold a lot of games at the $9.99, and we gave her more prototypes and we said, let's take the price up to $12.99. And she took them in and she sold more at, she kept selling them at $12.99. Then we said, let's take it up again as we were getting smarter for, well, what would it actually cost us to produce these in mass? Where's the place where we could make enough money? And so she ended up selling them at a retail price of $14.95. And that's where we, Steve and I agreed, okay, let's stop at that point. And she still was selling them because half of, basically a store would bring it in at $7.50 and double the price and sell it at $15 or $14.99. So we did some math and talked to some manufacturers and figured out, okay, we could probably make some money at a $7.50 wholesale.
Hey, Kev, can I jump in really quick?
Please.
Yeah, the only thing I'll correct you on there, Kevin, is we weren't saying let's do it at $9.95, $12.95, $14.95. Kevin and I, having parachuted into this industry from advertising, consulting, kind of knew nothing about it. Actually, it was, I think, Celeste in my memory that was saying, all right, no, guys, this price $9.99 is too low. Let's go $12.95. No, that's still too low. Let's go $14.95. She said, that's your sweet spot right there. And throughout this the 10 years that we've been doing this, we kept on running into really good people who would help us get the knowledge that we just didn't have. And that it's okay not to have the knowledge, and you're not necessarily expected to have the knowledge. It's just, you gotta bump into people and really listen to what they're saying, because they're gonna help you learn all their mistakes, or their knowledge is unbelievably helpful. Sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And in fact, looking back on it, I think our lack of knowledge helped us in a lot of ways, because in a minute, Steve's going to talk about how we evolved our packaging. I think if we were in the business, we probably would have done what a lot of people do in the business, is put it in a cardboard box, but we didn't know enough to do that. Similarly, I remember talking to Celeste, this retailer at Fairfield Hobbytown. She said, boys, I got to tell you, this is one of the best selling games I've ever had. And she sold between her two stores. She had another store at the time in Stamford. I think she sold over 300 games during that holiday season. Now, I don't know what 300 games is. Is that a great number or not? And Celeste made it sound like, no, that's a real good number. And I said, well, how many Yahtzees do you sell, for example? Because Yahtzee's been around for a while. It's considered a successful game. So she looked up in the computer and she said, 52. I think that was the number, 52. And I said, is that a week, a month? How often you sell that? And she goes, no, that's in a year. And I said, in a year? So you sell one Yahtzee game a week? And my gut, based on the reaction she was having in the store with our TENZI game and the other reactions we were getting from others, I said, I think we can sell more than one game per store per week. So that got us on a roll. And so that first holiday season of 2010, we were basically in two stores. Is that right, Steve?
Yep, Hobbytown, Fairfield, and Stamford.
Yeah. So then, and then I'll kick it over to Steve here as he talks about how our packaging evolved out of those prototype forms.
Sure. So those 300 sales in two stores in 2 months at least gave us that's what we're just looking for, proof of concept. And that gave us enough proof of concept to say, okay, now let's see if we can't reduce the costs, get a better pack. And because the packaging that was the prototype was just too expensive. This plastic case, way too expensive. So what we were able to do is find a plastic tube that perfectly fit all 40 dice, and sourced them out here in New Jersey. And we put our little label on, and then we took our dice and we put them in, and we were packing them. The first 1,000, we were packing them all nice and neat in our garage. And after you pack 1,000 dice, each one with your fingers, making sure all the ones go in the same way, you don't want to do that too much longer. So we found a manufacturing partner, and they're up in the Boston, Massachusetts area, called Grand Prix International. Spectacular manufacturing partner. And
Steve, I'm going to jump in because on the packaging, as you can see, and Steve mentioned it before, this is the packaging. The ones are all lined up. It would be a lot easier, and certainly in mass production is going to be less expensive just to throw the dice in the tube, 40 dice, but as you'll see, we took basically dice and we turned it into a brand. So by having those ones lined up the way they are, yes, it costs more to manufacture and package them that way, but that starts to tell you the brand story. It's different than just, because if they're just in there as loose dice, it looks like, no, they're just dice. Why do I need all these dice? But if you see them lined up as ones, you start to see, oh, there's a story there. There's a differentiation. There's a branding. And in fact, the story is get all 10 dice on the same number. So we're already starting to kind of brand it that way. So I want to mention that, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So working with Grand Prix, we ended up getting the prototype, or from prototype to now we got a package, and we got all the ones like Kevin's saying, and we're really excited, and we're gonna send all these out. And so think we know it all now because we learned our lessons and we're sending stuff out. And when we got these produced, what we didn't realize is stuff like this. Dice can get kind of heavy, and all the bottoms kind of start falling out, and that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing, because now we got boxes of dice that are falling out all over the country, and
I remember stores started calling, you know, they got their first order and the phone started ringing, and I'm thinking, this is fabulous. They're ready to order again. Well, no, they wanted to give us a little feedback on the fact that they had dice all over the floor of their store.
Yeah. So
I got a question here. It says here, did you document the concept for the game as you went along so that you could explain it in 30 seconds, or did you just come up with the explanation when the store owner asked? I assumed you actually knew what you were going to say when they asked you.
Yes, we were very clear that, and that was the concept Steve had, speed Yahtzee being take 10 dice, roll them as fast as possible, and whoever can collect 10 of the same number, like 10 sixes, before anybody else can collect 10 sixes, they yell TENZI. So there was great clarity on that as the gameplay before walking in. If that's
I think what Doug's question is, did we say, hey, we got to truncate this sales pitch to do it under 30 seconds? We didn't have that, Kev. I mean, that was something that Celeste kind of pulled out of us. Hey, you got to explain it. All I got is 30 seconds.
Right. We were just lucky in the sense that you
didn't walk in there with a prepared pitch, knowing that you might have to pitch it in 30 seconds. But it sounds like you're recommending that everybody do that in advance of going into a sales situation. That you should be able to just, an elevator pitch could be 3 minutes. You don't have 3 minutes. You got like 30 seconds.
Yeah, in fact, Doug and I had talked about this a while ago. Absolutely not. I work with people on presentations, and forget the 3-minute elevator pitch. People are gone. They're lost. They're dead. And honest to God, I even think 30 seconds is too generous. As you'll see, when we got to the trade show, and I'm jumping ahead, but we had a 3-second pitch. Here's the 3-second pitch. This is the fastest game you'll ever play. That is a 3-second pitch. That makes somebody go, well, what do you mean it's the fastest game? And then you go to the 30, and then you go to the 3-minute. So it kind of built from there. But to Steve's point, we had this very fast, simple playing game, but it was Celeste, the owner, who made it very clear that no, you got to be able to package it that quickly for a store owner.
Yeah. Just to go kind of underscore the not knowing things. Again, that's another one of my a few skills. So as these started to sell after January of that holiday season, we got a call from a gentleman, and he said, "Hi, I'm a sales rep. I hear you've got a game, and I'd like to talk with you about it." And so, I said, "Well, what's a sales rep?" Again, not knowing much about anything. So we ended up meeting with him, and Celeste, that retailer, he was her sales rep, and so she turned him on to, hey, this game is selling really good. You guys should meet these guys. We met with him. He explained to Kevin and I what a sales rep does, what reps take it, sell it into the market. He was part of a sales group in the New England area, and so that next year, they helped us get from 2 stores to about 75 stores, and that was critical. Again, not knowing things. So we had come up, as I said, with our game. And as you can see here, we got white dots and black dots and white dots and black dots. And it took us about 8 months with this manufacturer until they mentioned something about the color of the dots. I said, wait, we can change the color of the dots? He goes, yeah, you can make them any color you want. So again, just an example of, you don't need to know everything. You're going to figure stuff out. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to, bumble through things. But if the idea is solid to begin with, you can kind of make your way in the correct direction. And so again, Grand Prix helped us work through all these issues and getting us to market.
So, and Steve, when they said, yeah, you can make those dots, which, by the way, not to use a very fancy term, it's called pips, but I digress. But Steve, did they also say you can make the dice any color? At the time?
Make the dice any color, you make the dots any color. So it went from, really, again, it was still more colorful than your regular white Monopoly dice. But that really started to change. Again, Kevin was talking about a brand, and it started to really, you saw some really vibrant, nice colors in both dots and dice. And so that really started to catch people's eye and be very eye candy on shelf. Kevin also talked about, the plastic tube. One of the thoughts behind keeping the tube, the plastic, is the dice are the most exciting part of the thing. Seeing all the colorful dice, keeping a real kind of neutral color logo, and having the dice be the hero. After we have been out for a while, there was a lot of copycats that came in and tried to do it. And because they were looking to make the most cost-efficient product, what they did was, Kevin was saying, they threw all the dice in a box so you couldn't see them. So they were kind of doing us a favor in letting us stand out for having really nice, colorful dice, where theirs was just a box of who knows what.
It's funny, when we were starting to show this to various people, some people would say, well, what would prevent me from, it's just dice. What would prevent me from just going out and buying my own dice and playing your game with a little bit of an attitude? And we'd said, nothing, go ahead. That's okay. And then they do the math actually, and they realize, oh no, this is a very good price even for dice alone. The other thought is that, a lot of times with inventors, and I was this way back when I was coming up with ideas, you get very protective of them, understandably, because there can be some sharks out there, but sometimes too protective and too careful that you don't communicate to other people what you're doing and what your idea is, because through that you can find partnerships, you can find, you network, you learn. And if there's ever an idea that's rip-offable, it's 40 dice in a tube. We don't have a patent on that. We can never have a patent on that. They're regular dice. We put them in a tube, and we came up with some fun rules, and that is very rip-offable. But nobody, subsequently, as Steve said, some people have done it, but that didn't stop us. I can imagine if we were at Shark Tank and Kevin O'Leary would say, oh, I'm not going to invest in it because this is the most rip-offable idea there is. But that's why, again, it's about building a brand and not just having 40 dice in a tube. So it's not 40 dice in a tube, it's TENZI, the world's fastest game, or it's a fun, fast frenzy. So that second year, we were in New England, as Steve said, and that rep nicely took us on and repped us. He subsequently said, usually, we expect, or we hope that a new manufacturer will have at least a few games that we can rep, but we only had that one game, but he believed enough in the game, enough in us, that he gave it a shot. So then we said, okay, what's the next step? And, in our little abstract in the write-up here, we said it's about risk-taking. Well, I'll put a little qualifier in there. It's really about smart risk-taking, because I don't think we ever got to the point where we said, oh my God, we're over our heads here. What did we do? We were taking smart risks along the way. So after we were in New England, we said, well, what's next? Well, I think we'd like to go national, but how do you do that? Well, we went to Toy Fair in New York City. So every February, with the exception, Mary Elroy knows, of this year and last year, but every February there's Toy Fair, which is a giant trade show at the Javits Center in Manhattan. And Steve and I said, all right, let's get a booth there for four days and start to pitch TENZI to retailers. And I think, Steve, maybe it was about that time where I discovered that to rent an overhead light for 4 days is $500. And it's so funny because I think there's no way in hell's world I'll pay $500 for a 4-day rental of a light. But then you do, because it makes the booth glow, and it gives you more attention at the trade show. So Steve and I go to this trade show, and as I remember it, and then Steve can correct me as we go along, we're standing in our booth, and it's you're out there, and you're like, okay, it's showtime now. Stores, retailers are starting to walk by, look at what you have, and Steve and I, you kind of a little sheepishly said, hey, we have a new game. Would you like to see it? And they'd smile and say, no, I'm good. The next person would walk by and we'd say, oh, we have a new game. Would you like to play it? No, I'm good. Thank you very much. And this was going on. Like, oh my God, I can't take 4 days of this. So then Steve and I would coach each other, and we changed our pitch from a question to a statement. So it went from, hi, would you like to try our new game? To we would look people right in the eye and we'd say, hey, this is the fastest game you will ever play. And that would stop them in their tracks. They'd look over and kind of saunter around and go, okay, what is it? And we said, it's called TENZI. The first person who can get all 10 of their dice on the same number yells TENZI and wins. And they're still, nonplussed. They're not too interested at this point. We go, we're going to show you. So Steve and I would do a quick demo, and then they would try it. And honest to goodness, after the first game, which takes no more than 25 seconds, after the first game, they are hooked. And they go, okay, come on, let's play again. Let's play again. So what's, psychology, and we all know it, but once one person comes to your booth and is making a little noise, then all of a sudden it makes it a safer place for other people. So then when there's a little energy and noise happening, other people wanted to stop by the booth. And what we also decided to do, because I was actually surprised when I looked at the other booths at Toy Fair, I was surprised at how, this is New York, it's a toy fair, it's energy, but a lot of the booths look kind of sedate. So what Steve and I agreed is that, no, we're going to run our booth like it's an arcade. So what we did was, when a retailer came over, we'd say, hey, you want to win this game now? If you can beat us in it, you can win this game. So there they were playing a game, and they were trying to beat us so we could give them a sample. And by God, we were very happy to put out samples. And then if they were interested in ordering it, we would say, okay, depending on how fast you can roll a TENZI, we're going to give you a discount, or 5, 10, or 15%. So again, it kept them engaged. They were having fun. It was lively. That brought more people over to the booth. So what ended up happening at Toy Fair, it went from that very slow, quiet first morning where the buzz started happening. And we were in New England, and some stores from New England stopped by our booth to say hello to us and tell us about their experience with the game. But all of a sudden, the word was getting out, and not only were retailers lining up at our booth, but then the rep firm in New England told other rep firms that you got to go to meet these TENZI guys because they have a game that we think could be a winner. So then reps started approaching us saying, hey, we'd like to rep your game. And over a 3-day period, it was lined up, lots of fun, writing orders, lots of energy, and it felt like this was heading in the right way.
Kevin, let me just jump in
yeah.
real quick.
Please.
So Kevin was talking about the value of the samples, of giving things away. So 2 things on that. One time when we'd give people would just walk past, and they wouldn't even stop. Sometimes we just hand them a game. And so there was an older gentleman at the booth across from us, and he was kind of surly. He was watching us, and he just strolled over. He said, "What the hell are you guys doing?" I said, "Well, we're having fun. We're giving people away, giving samples, and they try it." And he had a little bit cursing at us. He goes, "You don't effing give anything away. You effers are doing this all wrong." And then he, having said his piece of mind, he walked back to his booth. But I would say it's the hit rate of when we'd give people the game, and this was the first day we would do it, undoubtedly, they would come back the next day and say, we played it at the hotel or at the bar afterwards, and it was awesome. We want to buy this. And so during the course of the show, we gave out 100 games. Okay. And you think, 100 samples. Oh my God, that's a lot of, it's cost us $2 for the product. So if you're thinking for $200, we're getting our games into buyers for 100 different stores. Right? That's the best.
It's unbelievable. That's the cheapest, most magnificent marketing you can do.
Yeah. So the whole give it away, it comes back to you. That was literally happening on day 2, day 3, day 4. So sorry, Kev, that was just on the side.
No, and it's taken us time even after that. We started realizing, oh, we're going to give these games to everybody. So then we would start to give them to our, I don't even want to say competition, but the fellow booth folks, you know, the other game manufacturers around us, we'd give them our game. And then they became advocates. I would hear them say, oh, have you seen the TENZI guys? This is a great game. You should go down to their booth. So now they were pitching for us. You know, it's just, it is about, it's getting it in their hand. It's getting them involved, whatever the product is. So don't, when you have prototypes, don't get tight with them. Get them out and get them into people's hands.
So I got a couple questions here. How were you able to find a manufacturer? Was that a local person that you could interact with?
Perfect segue, Doug. So I'm going to kick it over to Steve, because now, you know, all these stores now want it and we have to ratchet up. And Steve was the number one person involved in that.
So everything was kind of a step-by-step process. Like the first thing from way back when we were just getting kind of prototypes, you know, went on Google and there was a site, gameparts.net. And so that's where we got the first dice. And then I'm sure Mary knows that, right? Mary knows that. And then when we kind of went back to him again and again, he said, I think you're going past our need or what we can supply you with. You should talk to who we get our dice from, which is Grand Prix. They connected us to Grand Prix, again, up in Massachusetts, and they do everything soup to nuts. And they have been an unbelievable partner for the whole 10 years that we've been doing this. Again, knowing nothing about manufacturing overseas, China, they have had relationships there for 25, 35 years. So rather than just calling Alibaba or, you know, Googling overseas factories, having them as the, I mean, could we get it cheaper by doing it ourselves? Absolutely. Would we have wanted to do that? Never. So these guys have been really important, but even with doing with them, there are mistakes that you make. As I said before, the dice falling out of the tubes. One time we had a bad thing where the dice were smelling, which was not good at all when the dice smell like gasoline. But all these things on that day, it's the worst thing in the world, but you work through them and, you know, you kind of move forward. They ended up, because then you have all these games coming over, you have 10,000 games coming over, and suddenly we're like, oh, where are we going to put them? They get us in touch with a warehouse out in Illinois that they've used before. Again, so all these things, you know, you don't have to know everything. You're not going to know everything. Ask enough questions and good people will point you to good answers.
You know, one of the things that I think Steve's real good at is setting up systems and processes. You know, the thought of, you know, having hundreds of customers, and now since then we've had thousands of customers, but, you know, that's rather daunting. And how can two knuckleheads manage that? Well, Steve is a systems process guy, and like QuickBooks, right? QuickBooks is an amazing way to, I mean, I remember, I was born 16 years before Pong even came around, so I know old school. And old school, when I worked in advertising, you had a department of 6 or 7 people, and you'd ask for a report, and yeah, we'll get it to you on Thursday. And now with QuickBooks, you can put it in and you can have today's sales on this brand, you know, what you owe. And clearly a lot of you are familiar with QuickBooks. It's absolutely remarkable. And two of us were able to take in orders, put them in the system, get the word out to the warehouse, have them ship it. Systems and processes are absolutely mandatory.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it enables a 3-person team that Kevin and I and Kevin's wife are to be able to kind of act as a full up and running company. You know,
I'll share I want to talk a little bit about specialty toy stores versus big box, and then I'm going to play some voicemails for you, just very brief voicemail tape. You know, when we went to Toy Fair, we you know, a lot of these are mom and pop stores. There's big box there, of course, as well, but we decided we're going to go specialty stores, mom and pop stores, toy stores, gift stores. That was going to be our target, because without them, this product, even though, yeah, we have a brand name and we have the ones lined up, it's still, to a great extent, still a bunch of dice. But by getting into the specialty stores, that changes it tremendously, because now we have a partner at the most critical moment, which is the point of sale. So we would say, when they would come to our booth at Toy Fair, we'd say, So Steve, I don't know if you happen to have the rack with you there that held the 9 games.
Yeah.
So Steve will grab that. See, Steve used to work on Slim Jims, and if you know how Slim Jims are merchandised at a deli counter where they hang from a rack, well, you'll see something familiar looking here because we created this rack that allowed 9 games to hang from it, and it had a header card on it. And we told the stores, here's what you do. You can buy TENZI, it'll have 9 games, it'll be $67.50 wholesale. Take this rack and put it out on the counter close to your cash register. And we're also going to give you a demo game, so you can easily demo it to your patrons, to your customers. Now, having worked in advertising and Ocean Spray and some of those big brands, you know, you'd have to. It's an enormous cost to pay slotting allowances to supermarkets to get your product in, to pay promo allowances, but yet all these mom and pop specialty toy stores were willing to take that rack and put it right by checkout, have a demo game out, play the demo game with customers. So now we weren't just a bunch of dice sitting on a shelf. And one thing that really has been very clear to me over our journey here is the power of merchandising. It depends on what line you're in, but the power of merchandising and what happens at the point of sale and getting the retailer partner involved in it, that absolutely put us on the map for sure. And in fact, as things were taken off, people loved it at Toy Fair. They started ordering it and they started to reorder it. And then we started to get a bunch of voicemail messages. And I'll just play a couple because we held on to them. We were having so much fun. But these are voicemail messages we got early on in the process as we were starting to get some traction with TENZI and it was starting to hit.
I need another 144 TENZIs. I just emailed you the article that was in our paper and they are flying off the shelves.
If I can ask you please to call me back at this number to tell me that you got the order and that you've sent them already, I hope. But we've never had anything move this quickly.
Give me a call. I think I'm gonna need about another 18 of those TENZI games.
I love that one. Give me a call. I'm gonna need some more of those TENZI games.
And so, but what we were able to do, again, small, tiny company, in the early days, you know, not a lot of funds for marketing, advertising, but you do have things that you can use. So we took all those voicemails and we, you know, put a little video or audio together, and we would, when we sent out an email to either customers who just got the starter kit, we had that live link in it to say, hey, hope your starter kit arrived. And here's some, you know, and you get a lot of sales just like these folks. And then click on, and it became a self-fulfilling prophecy of, hey, these are doing well. So you can kind of cobble together what you do have if you need to make marketing materials.
Yeah, we also came up with some TENZI shirts, and we trademarked. We do own this line, which is kind of fun. Have a dice day. So, and stores want it. Oh, can you send us some T-shirts? Oh, we have a couple of the young sales clerks that we have love your game. Could we get them a T-shirt? So now they're asking us for those, and the kids would wear them in the store, and they had have a dice day on them. In fact, and at one point, Steve, we should probably revisit it because I think we could have a little more fun with it. We were saying to retailers, hey, if you want to change your car license into a vanity plate, we'll pay you $500. Just put TENZI on it. And they were like, sure, sign me up. So there's lots of creative, fun, guerrilla type of marketing tactics you can do to continue to build the brand.
Quick question here, Kev and Doug. Does anybody want to hear, again, a little bit the different paths between specialty and big box? Or is that?
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Okay, again, there are two very different ways to go, and I'm not sure. It's tough to have a foot in each lane. One of the things that, going big box, what happens, and we had a lot of folks who were talking about it early on. Careful going there, is what happens if you go there. As Kevin was saying, one, you don't have folks saying what this game is. It's just sitting there on the shelf. Two, you're really getting beat up by price. They want the discounts so they can pass the discounts on, having a lower price. Three, if you don't hit a number pretty quickly of sales, they're probably going to boot you out. And whereas with specialty, and you're just a number, they're just looking at you as a line item, a number, if you hit that number or not. Whereas with specialty, you have a lot of relationships They're there at retail. They can, you know, tell your story, the 30 seconds or less story. And over the years, we've stayed with the specialty, and it's become an incredibly valuable platform to launch game after game after game. They're asking us, what's next? How can we help? If we have questions on pricing, on new products, on game ideas, they're incredibly valuable source. So two really, really, really different paths. Yeah, you can get if you hit in big box, huge numbers, but it's also heard a lot of nightmare stories on that side of it.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to mention, and Doug, if you have more questions, you can start firing. The thing about TENZI, when you break it down and do sort of diagnostics on, okay, so why are people liking this very, very simple game? You know, in this day of, you know, everything's happening quickly and people's ability to concentrate, you know, it's hard for people, for many people, even though strategy games are wonderful for sure. This game is not that at all. And we tell people, hey, if you like strategy games, this is not it for you. But what's amazing about the TENZI game is when you break it down, first of all, as we've been very clear about, it's really simple to learn. You can learn it in a matter of seconds. You can then play it in a matter of seconds. And if you lose, you say, well, let's play it again. Let's play it again. There's umpteen versions of it. You got some cards there, Steve? We came out with an add-on product called 77 Ways to Play TENZI. It's a set of cards which gives them, you know, the most basic way is roll your dice as fast as possible, and whoever can come up with 10 of the same number before anybody else plays. Well, Steve and I sat down for a couple of days and came up with these silly, goofy, crazy ways to roll 10 dice, such as splitsy, 5 of one number, 5 of another number. AC-doocy, roll until you get all ones and twos. So there's lots of different ways to play. It's also what's called, and Mary Elray educated me on this, an all play game, meaning that everybody is playing at the same time. So you're not waiting for your turn. So everybody is engaged, all ages. We've had a Thanksgiving where an 82-year-old was playing with an 8-year-old, and there were 20 other people in the room at the same time playing. So all ages, you can play for any amount of time. You want to play for 5 minutes before dinner? Great. You want to play with drinks and until the end of the night? Sure, go ahead, do it that way. And you can do it with any number of people. I did an event a couple of years back where we had 600 people in a ballroom. It was a fundraiser for the Indianapolis Parks Foundation, and they said, would you come out and run the world's largest TENZI game, because we love your game. And sure enough, we had 600 people in a ballroom playing TENZI at the same time. And that video actually is up on YouTube. You put in world's largest TENZI game and you'll see them playing. So the game itself and the gameplay is very flexible and covers a lot of bases. So that has helped its success. So between the name, the branding, the merchandising, the gameplay, or partnerships with the specialty stores, it was just a really great formula that worked for us.
So I got a question here on the chat. They ask, how long did it take from the initial idea and the phone call to the start of your appearance at Toy Fair? Can you give us some time frame? How long was that process?
The initial phone, what phone call?
I would guess you had some sort of process where you first pitched the idea to each other.
Yeah, I think, Steve, you said a phone call when you first pitched it.
Sure. So we basically, the first with presenting to Kevin was like August of 2010.
Right.
August of 2010. Toy Fair was February 2012.
Oh.
And just to talk through a little bit of the gradual, a lot, if what we did early on, game manufacturing, how do you do? There's a lot of nightmare stories of, I have 50,000 games in my basement that I ordered and they're not selling, and don't go into game manufacturing because it's really, really tough. And they're these big horror stories. And Kevin and I, we did 6 prototypes. And then when those sold, we did 12 prototypes and 20 and 50 and 100. And it was only, there was only really a couple decision points that we had, which was, okay, when we were going to cut a check for $10,000 to our first big order of games. And with Kevin and I said, all right, we never want to go more than, hey, what's going to make you sleep uncomfortably at night. We never wanted to do that. We wanted, let's do this, that we can be okay here. And when that sells through, all right, then we're going to move progressively forward. So there was never this huge entrepreneur's risk, and we're going to risk it all, baby, and hope it was just this really gradual growth. And it wasn't trying to speed up ahead. It was just, so by the time it was 2012 Toy Fair, it was kind of a natural.
So then how did you handle returns?
There weren't many. What return,
In the specialty world, they, a lot of times, they bought, 18 games, and if they would eventually sell them, so it's not as though like with the big box where they brought in thousands of cases. So the game was working. They were, we built a partnership with these folks. So even the ones where the bottoms were falling out and they had dice all over it, and we were upset about it. They said, "Don't worry about it. We'll just tape them up," because we had we had connected with them at the trade shows. So we didn't get returned. It's a rare thing.
Yeah, it's actually the bigger stores. One of as big as we get is kind of Barnes and Noble. And if something doesn't sell through and then they would return stuff, or not even return it. They would mark it down to discount and then bill you for the difference. So, and that's Barnes and Noble. So even where I would imagine working with the big box stores, that gets even worse. So no real returns to speak of with specialty.
So when you were in the Toy Fair, would it have helped if you had a shill, somebody at the booth who just looked like they were having fun but was really working for you guys?
We were accused of that. One of our sales rep or potential, he came back and he kind of came back into the booth and he said, what are you doing to create this buzz? And we said, hands up, said, it's nothing. Well, it's the game itself that's doing it. He says, no, I don't believe you. But we had one retailer who to this day is spectacular. Gwen Ottenberg from out in Kansas. She has a toy store in Kansas, which is spectacular. And so she kind of was an early discoverer of us. And she has a voice that carries all the way through the Javits Center. So she would, and she knew what she was doing. She wanted to light the match. And so she would get TENZI and she would shriek TENZI that would carry front to back across the whole halls. And so she was our shill. We weren't paying her, but we are indebted to her for that. And she's one of the, again, back to the relationships we have that you won't get from the other, big box channel.
And I'll just add to that, years ago when I was coaching people on presentations, I had it down to 2 words, and the 2 words I'd remind them of is energy sells. So even though we didn't have any actors or shills, Steve and I said, all right, we're going to have some fun here. We're going to give each other a hard time. When the stores come up, we're going to tease them a little bit, have fun with us. So we brought a lot of fun and energy, and that can be magnetic. And I remember one time we were at a trade show and somebody said, well, I really like your game, but can you guys come to my store and pitch it for me? Because there's just something about the presentation. So I remember one time, actually, I was watching a young gal demoing our game, and she didn't add the fact that there was speed involved of it. So I'm watching her and she said, well, here's how you play this game. You take 10 dice, and she put them on the table, and she said, you want to collect 10 of the same number. And then she would start to slowly move over the dice. So she collected 10 of the same number and never said, no, this is a speed game. This is a crazy, energetic, quick speed game. Because the woman who was looking at this young gal do the demo said, that's it. You just roll dice and collect them. So it had to be a speed game. So no shills, but energy sells. What else you got, Doug?
Yeah. Did you guys consider doing anything with crowdfunding and Kickstarter?
I have 2 reasons for that. I think we were before Kickstarter, so I don't believe it was an option. And 2, even if it was, I'll speak for maybe both of us, Steve, we're incapable of doing that. I'm still trying to figure out how to get on Instagram. So
yeah, incapable of doing that. But also, again, it was the steps we took were so small that I don't think the funding of it was ever at issue.
So are you you're selling on Amazon now. I think you have like 4.8 stars or something out of 5. That's fantastic. Did you do anything to get the reviews up?
Well, no, when you look at the reviews, I mean, they'll say things like what we've said. I like this game. My whole family can play it. You know, you can play for as long as you want. But one review was, even my husband will play this game. So I think we were fortunate. We got lucky in hitting this place of simple, fast, fun games. Because, and I'm going to segue to, I'll tell you something about our next game, because that too gets great reviews, and it's because it fits that formula. So my son, Colin, he would pitch Steve and I ideas, and he had, you know, Colin's a smart kid, but his games were too complicated when he'd pitch them to Steve and I, and would say, no, you got to keep it simpler. It has to be like TENZI. You got to play it in less than 30 seconds. And eventually he really got it, and he pitched us on a card game idea called Slapsy. And it is an extremely simple game. And when we pitched it, you know, it was probably 4 or 5 years later that we actually showed that at a trade show. And it was an instant hit, and it became Game of the Year from Astra, as TENZI did, because it fit the formula of, I understand how to play it immediately, and I can start playing it immediately. So that has worked. And then subsequently, Colin also had an idea that Steve and I helped develop with him, and that is called BuildZi, which is a speed building game. ZI is the formula, simple, fast, fun. That is our true north, and that's what when people pitch us games, we'll tell them, we'll know within seconds if it's right for us. We're not saying it's a bad game. We just know what we're looking for, which is simple, fast, fun.
Well, not only that,
I got a question here. Sorry to interrupt, but it says, what is your process? How do you stumble or produce your game? Do you like sit down and say, I am going to design a game, and then you just have brainstorm until you come up with something?
Well, I think when Kevin was talking about the formula, and then early he said sometimes the more restrictions you have on it makes you focus in a smaller space rather than what kind of game can I invent out of everything. And the formula of all play, simple, what else we got, Kev?
You can play as long as you want, or as short as you want, as many people as you want.
But really, again, it's no taking turns, and the key, and so we know right away whether we're coming up with the ideas or whether we're pitched with the ideas. If it can't really kind of fit into that really, really basic formula, it may still be a great game, but it's not a game for us that fits what we do and what people are expecting. Because when people are coming by our booth at the trade shows, they're in a zone of, hey, I really don't want to think. We've come up with some word games, you know, that make people think a little bit too hard, and that never works.
And I think I'll just add to that, Doug, if you keep your eyes and ears open and just be open to the universe, and by that I mean ideas come at you. I remember one time, Steve, I think it was in Phoenix, we were at a trade show where I was just goofing around with people, where we were grabbing, it had nothing to do with our games at all. There was some activity where we're grabbing blocks as quick as we can. And I remember Steve saying, I think there's a game in there somehow, because there's energy, there's fun, people are laughing. We hadn't had a game in that, but he could see that there's something happening there. And that can be the germ, the beginning of another idea. So you just got to be open to what comes your way.
I wonder if the TENZI could be a drinking game.
You think so?
Yeah.
We know for a fact it can. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
It has sold it in a lot of college campus bookstores.
I see.
Yeah.
You know, a couple of thoughts, lessons learned along the way. A couple that jump out at me is, and Steve and I have talked about this over the years, is for entrepreneurs, just start somewhere. Too often, you know, what's the line? Perfection is the evil of good, or, you know, or whatever it is. You got to just start, and you're not going to have the answers, and you don't quite know what you're doing, but you start somewhere and you learn from it, and you move on to the next stage and the next stage. So one thing is just start somewhere. Don't feel like you have to have it all figured out. Another lesson is find the right partners. You can't do it alone. I mean, Steve and I connected, and that's been fabulous, but we also connected with the retail stores. We connected with our reps. Mary Elroy and I and Steve had connected. So be open to working with the, you know, partnerships. Help them succeed, and I can help you succeed. create a brand versus sell just a product. Have not only a 30-second pitch, but have a 3-second pitch so you can immediately grab somebody. So those are just some of the lessons learned that are transferable to pretty much any business.
Very cool. Well, I think that's all the questions we have. Did you guys want to add anything else? Final thoughts? Oh, somebody's asking if I've got an email. I think I may be releasing your emails to my class, if that's all right.
Yeah, yeah. And as we said earlier, if anybody has any follow-up questions, whether it has anything to do with TENZI or their ideas, or need help finding a production thing, or anything, always willing to jump on a phone or email. That's
great. That's great. All right. Well, I want to thank you all for your great presentation. And we'll have another presentation next month. I'm not quite sure. I haven't quite settled it yet. And we're getting some compliments now. Excellent presentation. So thanks a bunch, and I'll send you a link to the video.
Thanks, guys.
Terrific. Thanks, everybody, for your time.
Be well.
Have a good night.
Good night, all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.